This is the MMA World Cup tier list where I'm going to be ranking the best nations in the world at MMA on a tier list, S through to D tier, S being the best and D tier being the worst, and there's only room for one in S tier, so at the end of this video, there will be a nation that will be crowned the best MMA nation on earth. I've got all of the flags of these best countries hidden around the perimeter of the screen, and we're going to slowly reveal them one by one as the video goes on and place them where they belong on the tier list, saving S tier for last. Now, I do have some parameters before I get into this, because this is an interesting topic, because what really does decide what nation you are representing. What I'm going to say is, to make it fair, I'm not going to have Khabib being represented by America because he trained at AKA after he got to the UFC. I'm going to decide what country spawned the talent that got them to the main stage and that took them throughout their MMA career. So for guys like Mateusz Gamrot, he's going to be representing Poland because that's where he got his initial talent in MMA, even if that talent was refined in America. Otherwise, it's going to be America and no other countries, let's be real, because they all move over there to train eventually. But I'm going to be choosing the country that spawned their talent, that got them to the dance, that developed them in the first place is what I'm going to be doing. And of course, Adesanya's going to be representing New Zealand, Usman's going to be representing America, and Dricus is going to be representing South Africa. That's just how it works. I don't want to get too tricky here, but it makes all the sense that that's going to be how it works. We're going to choose the country that gave you the talent in the first place, where you first started developing your MMA skills. That's what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to start straight away with someone right over here, which is, I believe, Australia. I think the star below this is Australia and not New Zealand. So this is Australia, and I'm going to put Australia at the top of B tier, in my opinion. Australia really are making some waves. Of course, they've got Alexander Volkanovski, they've got Robert Whittaker, they've got up-and-comers in the divisions like Jack Della Maddalena and other guys as well. They've got Taito Ivasa in the heavyweight division. They've got an abundance of talent in the sport. Every single division you look in, pretty much, you will find an Australian prospect, and other than maybe flyweight until recently, where Steve Erceg just beat a guy who was like nearly top 10 ranked in David Dvorak in his debut on short notice. So Australia is doing very well right now. They've got Volkanovski, so that does give them a few bonus points, along with having Robert Whittaker, who is basically champion B in that middleweight division. They've got a ton of contenders. Jack Della Maddalena looks unstoppable at welterweight as well. Of course, I've spoken about the heavyweight in Tuivasa. They've also got Tyson Pedro as well in the light heavyweight division. Not the best of fighters, but they do have a lot of talent in all of the divisions, and in some of those divisions, they have either top contenders, champions, or surging prospects on the rise up the rankings. So I'm going to put Australia at the top of B tier. By the way, left to right is going to indicate how strong you are within the tier that you're in. So Australia is at the top of B tier, they're on the left, and on the right of B tier is going to be the worst of B tier. So I'm going to go on to another country on this tier list, which is Poland. I'm going to put Poland at the top of C tier, in my opinion. Really underrated. And also, I forgot to mention this as well, I'm going to be talking about population size here, because if one country has 500 million people or a billion people and they've only got 2 champions, I'm not going to look at that the same as if a country with 2 million people has 1 champion. That's going to be way more impressive if a country with 2 million has one champion. So I'm going to put Poland at C tier. Not the biggest of population sizes, but over time, they keep producing really talented guys that make it to the top of their division. They have a weirdly overrepresented amount of champions in the sport as well. I mean, they had Jan Blachowicz, they had Joanna Jędrzejczyk as well. They've got some Polish people. You know, Mateusz Gamrot is coming up in the lightweight division as well. You've got Marcin Tybura in the heavyweight division. You've got guys like Marcin Prachnio in the light heavyweight division as well, who I think is on a win streak right now. So you look at all of the divisions, you'll find a Polish fighter, and even Joanna Jędrzejczyk is arguably right now on paper the greatest strawweight of all time. So it's got to be considered. I'm putting Poland in C tier. They've got a bunch of fighters for how small of a country they are and how you wouldn't really expect them to be on this list, right? It's not a country with amazing infrastructure like the US to build these athletes and make sure they have a presence, because the US kind of works in a way where their sole priority is to succeed at sports as a country. And so is Russia that way as well. So you got other places like Poland where just by natural systems, they've ended up being quite good in MMA. So I'm going to put them at the top of C tier. I do think they deserve a mention. Very good country for MMA. We move on to another country on this tier list, which is the Czech Republic. I'm going to put them at D tier. I had to mention them in this video because they have a champion with a very small population. They finally have their champion, Yuri Prohaska. He's not a champ, but he kind of is, if you know what I'm saying. He never lost as a champion. He vacated his belt due to an injury, or maybe USADA, who knows. They were testing him quite a bit before that injury happened. Either way, I think they deserve to be on the map right now because I'm going to try and keep this current. Okay, I know I looked at Joanna and Jacek for strawweight, for like an example of a good Polish fighter. But I'm going to keep it somewhat recent, at least within like the last 10 years of the sport, just to give some kind of parameter. Otherwise, it's going to be such a difficult list to make. And there's so many things to take into consideration. So as of recently, although they only have pretty much one fighter outside of, I believe, Ludovic Klein, and maybe they also have a strawweight or some female fighter like Blazer, I think, Teresa Blader or something along those lines. They have some fighters, but Yuri really put them on the map. So I'm going to put them at D tier in this video. We move on to another country that's going to be on this tier list, which is France. LOL. Down at D tier, Soyuz. Pathetic. No, I'm joking. They have Cyril Gane. He's number 1 at heavyweight in the world right now. Maybe number 2. Pavlovich should be above him at this point because Gane keeps losing. So he should be number 2. But he's a top-level heavyweight fighter. They also have a ranked fighter in Nassourdine Imavov, which is very, very impressive to have. They have other few fighters here and there from France. I don't even know if they're from France, but Benoit Saint-Denis, I don't think he is. I think he's American, but either way, it's hard to tell sometimes because when they go to Paris, they just put a bunch of like French Canadians on the card and stuff like that, which we're going to separate. But they also have a fighter in Manon Fiorot who is fighting Rose Namajunas, who might earn a title shot if she wins. She's at the top of the women's flyweight division. So although France has been absolutely irrelevant in MMA for the past however long it's been, recently, they've got a few people to the top of the divisions. So I'm going to put them at D tier, but because they haven't had a champion like the Czech Republic, I'm not going to rank their few people as much as I'm going to rank the Czech Republic. Plus, France has a pretty decent population size compared to the Czech Republic, so they're also going below Czech Republic at D tier. We move on to another nation that's going to get ranked, and it is Mexico. I think Mexico has worked their way up into B tier. You know what I mean? You asked me this 2 years ago, maybe they'd be not even on this list. I'll be real with you. Mexico didn't really have a presence. Of course, they had some guys throughout history, but right now is the surge of Mexican MMA. So I'm going to put them at B tier for now because they do have champions in Brandon Moreno and Alexa Grasso, but the champions that they have are kind of like, Moreno should be maybe a guy. I think Pantoja's going to beat him, but he is expected by many to have a bit of a run in the flyweight division. But Alexa Grasso arguably will be the underdog in a rematch against Valentina Shevchenko. So they're not the strongest of champions, but I am going to have to put Mexico up there because they've got Yair Rodriguez fighting Alexander Volkanovski. They got a bunch of contenders in a bunch of different divisions. And other than maybe the heavier weight classes, they seem to have a lot of people coming up at like lightweight and welterweight. And I think Ignacio Bahamondes is Mexican. I'm going to get a few confused here just off the top of my head. But there's a lot of Mexican talent coming up in MMA. And they're really starting to make a scene. And they're even starting to like bring their own style of jiu-jitsu. I've seen Craig Jones talk about this on his channel, where he talks about like Mexican jiu-jitsu is just really aggressive with like strikes and damage off of their back to open up opportunity to submit you off of their back. And apparently Mexico's changing the jiu-jitsu game. So with their champions that they have, with their title contenders that they have, I'm going to have to put Mexico at B tier. Just not as good as Australia right now. Maybe they'll get there soon, but Australia, for the population size, to have the presence that they do in the scene is crazy. So Australia's still at the top of B tier, but Mexico's not too far behind them. We'll see what will happen over the next 5 years. Maybe they will move up to A tier. Who knows? We move on to another nation in the world to put on this tier list, which is China. What's going on? You know what I mean? Li Jingliang, Zhang Weili, and no one else? You got billions of people. Let's pick it up a bit here. You know what I mean? 2 fighters out of Poland's not bad. They got like a, 40 million population, something like that. Billions? We got billions to work with. I know there's ONE FC as well. I get it. And they've got like fighters over there that are really good. But I'm going to try and keep this UFC centralized because the UFC does have the best fighters in the world. But they do have a presence in ONE FC. They do have a presence in other combat sports. But I think for their population size, I mean, you're talking about, like, what? Is it nearly like a quarter of the world's population is in China? You'd think they'd have like a few champs. So I'm just going to put them at C tier, below Poland, but still they have a presence because they have a champion and they have other fighters in other divisions. But I think they only have 1 or 2 ranked fighters in the UFC. One of them is Zhang Weili and the other one is Yan Xiaonan, who's a strawweight title contender, just beat Jessica Andrade. So their women are really holding it down. So China is going to be mentioned here. They're going to be at C tier. We move on to another nation, which is Rasputin. It's Russia. They're going to go at A tier, okay? I feel like I've spoiled the ending of this video already by putting Russia at A tier. Russia's very good. I think in about 5 years, they may boost themselves up to S tier because they are making a bit more of a recent surge. But you look across the board and they have a bunch of different types of Russians. You know what I'm saying? They've got the Dagestanis and the Chechnyans going on. They got guys like Khabib, who's the lightweight GOAT. They've got Makhachev right now as the lightweight champion. So they have one active champion in the UFC. They have Magomed Ankalaev. They have Umar Nurmagomedov coming up in the bantamweight division as well. They have a bunch of fighters in a bunch of different divisions. You look at any single division, you'll find a Khabib-ish type guy in that division that's making waves. So they've got to be at A tier. They've got to be above the rest of the guys that I've put on this tier list so far. But I'm going to have to put them not quite at S tier yet. But they do have other Russians, like at heavyweight. They do span across a bunch of different divisions. I wish Askarov was still fighting because that would give them that sort of relevance in the flyweight division as well. But they have Pavlovich, they have Volkov, so they have all of the lower weight class guys in like Khabib and Makhachev in that sort of Caucasus area that they have with Dagestan and that. And then they have like the bigger northern Russians in Pavlovich and Volkov and some of their heavier weight class guys. So, and you even have guys like Vadim Nemkov in Bellator and the guy right now, I can't even remember his name. He just beat Arhan Buller. I watched the KO happen, but I can't remember how to pronounce his name. I'll just butcher it, but the guy at ONE FC, heavyweight champ, just finished Arhan Buller, nearly knocked him out the ring. I watched a KO. He's the champ over there now as well. So they got champs in different organizations, and they got spread out amongst a bunch of different weight classes as well. So I'm going to have to put Russia at A tier. Maybe in 5 years, they could challenge the top spot. We'll have to see what happens. They've also got like Piotr Yan. They've got a bunch of different types of Russians all over the place in the UFC. We move on to another nation that's going to have to be on this tier list, who is South Africa. Drickus is putting them on the map. You know what, chat? It's a video. Oh my God, it's such a bad habit I have. I say chat to like random people in my life as well sometimes. You know what I mean? Like if I'm just talking to my mum, I'll just end a sentence with the word chat. It's a real bad habit, but either way, South Africa, they're on the map. And I'll be honest with you guys, if you look through the rankings in the UFC, you're not going to find too many different nations. Genuinely, there's probably about 10 that are present in every division. And then the rest of the world just ain't in MMA pretty much. There's so many more countries on earth than the ones that are represented in the UFC rankings. And it seems to be a battle of about 8, 9, 10 of the countries that are really battling in the rankings right now. But Drickus, I'm going to have to mention him in D tier because he's like the other, countries in D tier, like Czech Republic and, France as well, where they have a fighter who's representing them, but they don't have the backup with like the other fighters on the rankings. They have the general at the top, but they don't have the soldiers. You know what I mean? But they do have Dricus du Plessis. They do have Cameron Simon. So that's going to be the only African nation on this tier list. And Dricus du Plessis holding it down for Africa right now, representing them on the main stage, actually fighting out of Africa. His skills were founded in Africa. He still trains there to this day. They also have Cameron Simon, who's going to be on that card with him in July, UFC 290, which is in a couple of weeks as well. He's a bantamweight on a 2-fight win streak, so they have some fighters. So I'm going to have to put them at D tier, but lower down than the other ones in D tier because their one fighter isn't as good as the one fighter in France or Czech Republic. We move on to another fighter or country on this tier list, which is going to be the world goats of history, UK, okay? Tell your great-grandparents we're sorry. We're putting them at B tier, low down. The UK itself, it's in the mix, you know what I mean? Low population size compared to the Russias and the other big three that are going to be battling for A or S tier later on in this video. But they're in the mix. We have guys in every division. I'm going to say from we because I'm English. So I'm going to say we. We have Nathaniel Wood at featherweight coming up. We got Lerone Murphy at featherweight. We got a champion right now in Leon Edwards. We had Michael Bisping as a champion before that. We got Tom Aspinall, who's basically a guaranteed title contender of the future in the heavyweight division. We've got guys coming up at flyweight and Jake Hadley, who's a dangerous contender. We've also got guys in other divisions as well. We got Arnold Allen, who's a top 5 featherweight right now, ranked number 4. We got people in every division pretty much other than middleweight, but why would we want people at middleweight? It's an absolute garbage division. But there are fighters from the UK. You'll see them all around every promotion. There aren't many it's not like we have multiple champions, but they are a presence in nearly every division in the sport, pretty much. At any given time, there will be a UK fighter at somewhere in the top 10 of a division. You know what I'm saying? So we're always about. We're not at the top of being about. We're not the champions. We're not all top contenders lined up non-stop. 3 people in the top 5. But there's always some UK presence in the top 10 of our rankings in at least a few divisions in the UFC at any given time. And we have a champion now in Leon Edwards as well, who trained out of the UK as well. So, yeah, and he became a champion out of the UK, whereas some of these other places like Poland, you know, if Gamrot became a champ, he wouldn't have done it out of Poland. Joanna Jędrzejczyk did it out of ATT, but her skills were born in Poland. But UK, that kind of validifies it a bit more. So I'm going to put them at B tier. Got a bunch of fighters, bunch of talent, just not as much as some of the others that are above them, which we'll get to in a second. We move on to another nation that's going to have to be in this video, which is Moldova. I'm being real. I'm joking. They're going to be at C tier. I'm not putting Moldova at S tier, but I might put them at S tier in the thumbnail, you know. They're killing it. They got like 2.6 million people, and they've got literally a UFC fighter per under 1 million people. They've got, listen to this stat. Moldova has 2.6 million people. They have a ranked UFC heavyweight per 1.3 million people. For a country that has gone through such an economic downturn as Moldova recently, to pull that off with such a small population size. They even have some fighters in lower divisions as well, not to be confused with Romanian fighters, but they have Sergei Spivak, Moldovan, top 5 right now, not top 8 heavyweight. I think he's like 8 or 7 in the heavyweight division. They also have Alexander Romanov, who's top 15 in the heavyweight division. Think about that. They've got 2 top 15 heavyweights in the UFC. And they've got a population of 2.6 million people. 1 top 15 heavyweight per 1.3 million people. And if you include Kutalaba at light heavyweight, who is just outside the top 15, or I think he's now a bottom feeder, he's lost over and over again. But they have a UFC fighter per under 1 million people. You know what I mean? They have very, very good amount of UFC fighters for their population size. So I think they need to be mentioned. Even though they never had a champion, it's weird how many UFC fighters they have, especially top 15 heavyweights. Look at the top 15 heavyweight division. You'll see Brazilian, UK and Aspinall, Russian, American. Pretty much all it is, plus an Australian in Taito Ivasa. They're like the top dogs, and they dominate the whole of the heavyweight rankings. And these are countries with 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, 300 million people. Moldova's got 2.6, and they have 2 of the top 15 heavyweights. Big ups to Moldova. Round of applause. They're doing their thing. We move on to another country that needs to be on this tier list. That is, potato. It's Ireland. I'm going to put them at D tier. They had Conor McGregor. Well done. Now they have Ian Gary. You're not as good as Dricus right now because, well, McGregor's still ranked quite highly at lightweight, right? I think he's still in the top 10. So they have 2 fighters in the rankings. It really drops off once you go below B tier. I'm going to be real with you guys. You go from, you know, people that have fighters in a bunch of different divisions or countries that have fighters in a bunch of different divisions to D tier where it's like, well, they have one. He's ranked, right? You know what I mean? So Ireland's in that spot. They got Conor McGregor. They got Ian Gary. They're kind of kaput other than that, pretty much. So I'm going to put them at D tier, towards the bottom of D tier. We move on. That's Italy, not Ireland. Oh my God, it's not orange, it's red. So Italy, no wait, hang on. So let's talk about Italy, chat. Oh my God. I forgot I had both of them. I thought I just had Ireland and I was like, yeah, it looks orange enough. It's Italy, innit? That one's Ireland because it has the orange. Well, oh well. So let's talk about this one with the orange bit, Italy. Ireland, known for its spaghetti. No, Italy. Now I have to talk about Italy. So Ireland is this one, below Italy, and Italy is this one. Very similar flags, I'm sorry. I knew it before I even pulled out the other one, that's red, not orange. I understand flags of the world. Either way, simple mistake, don't crush me for it, but you will. Ireland. No, I've messed it all up. Italy. They have Marvin Vettori. He can't be KO'd. Italy has produced the best chin in combat sports history. They must be included. And they actually are making a surge right now because Cage Warriors is like going to, which is basically the European promotion outside of KSW. Those two are kind of the big power forces in Europe. Cage Warriors is going to Rome quite a bit now. And whenever they go, there's a bunch of Italian prospects on the card. So I think Vettori really has started a bit of a wave in Italy for a lot of these more, you know, a lot of these other prospects to come up the scene. So, yeah, I think Vettori sort of kicked in the doors. There's a few more coming up, but overall they just have Vettori. So, got to put him at D tier. Above Ireland, though. No, we'll have to put him below Ireland, right? Because Ireland had Conor McGregor, who is, at the end of the day, a double champ who beat Aldo and Alvarez and Mendez, and it kind of falls off. Holloway, Poirier, there's more names. Either way, Ireland, then Italy. We move on to another country on this tier list, which is Brazil. Okay, I've spoiled who's in number 1, but I'm still going to save it for the end of the video. Brazil is in A tier. I think they're below Russia. They don't currently have a champion now that Nunes is retired. Really specific time to make this video where I can say that, because if I had made this video any time over the past 5 years, there would have been a champion. Pereira was champ, you know what I mean? They had Figueiredo as champion. They have Nunes as champion as well. You know, there's been a few Brazilian champs over the past however many years, and since the start of MMA as well, they've always been in the scene. So you've got to include Brazil. I just think right now they're a step behind Russia. And that's proven by the Makhachev-Oliveira fight, you know what I mean? And you see these clashes between the Russians and the Brazilians. It seems like the Russians get the win more often than not, is all I'm going to say. I'm not going to use Umar Nurmagomedov versus Raoni Barcelos as an example, but I just did use Umar Nurmagomedov versus Raoni Barcelos as an example, so get over it, okay? That was peak Brazil versus Russia, that was, and Umar proved it, okay? Either way, Brazil's got to be in the mix. Look at any division in the UFC. Davis and Figueiredo, you got at flyweight, and then Alejandro Pantoja's fighting for a belt as well. So they might have a champion soon. I think he beats Moreno. Bantamweight, they got Brazilians there as well. They got Pedro Munoz in the bantamweight division. They've got in the featherweight division, Jose Aldo was the GOAT of the featherweight division, arguably still is the GOAT of the featherweight division. They got Big Money Moicano in the lightweight rankings, along with Charles Oliveira doing his thing, one of the greatest lightweights of all time. You look through any division, you'll find a Brazilian. Jailton Almeida coming up in the heavyweight division, Paulo Costa at middleweight. You know, there's always one. Anywhere you look in the MMA world, they've always got a champ. So I'm going to have to put Brazil at A tier. And then you've got to consider what Pitbull did in Bellator. He had quite a sick legacy in Bellator, so that's got to come into factor as well. And then you look at, you know, the guy who beat Demetrius Johnson, Adriano Moraes. He's 1 and 2 with Demetrius now, lost 2 of them, but has a win over the GOAT DJ. He did his thing at 1FC. There's a bunch of them. So Brazilians got to be at A tier. big population size, but the amount of fighters that come out of there are equivalent to their population size. So it's not like China where they got 1.7 billion people and 2 fighters on the roster. So I'm going to have to put Brazil at A tier, just below Russia right now. But I think Brazil and Russia could be switching around quite a bit, you know what I mean? Over the next few years, they're going to be in that battle for second place. I know you guys know who's in S tier already, but I'm going to go with the rest of the video anyway because I need viewing time. We move on to Georgia. Not the state, because I first of all typed in Georgia flag and some Confederate stuff came up. So I was very lucky to not include that flag when I searched up Georgia flag. But I got the country of Georgia's flag here. They are a very low population country. Not quite as low as a Moldova. Wait, where am I going to put these guys? Am I really going to put them at C tier? I think I am going to have to put them at C tier. Maybe they should be above Moldova. But Moldova has 2 top 15 ranked heavyweights. For such a small population, I'm going to have to put Moldova... I'm putting Moldova above China. I don't care. I don't care, dude. You got 1.7 billion people. Where's your 10 champs per fucking 10 years? What's going on? Moldova's got to be above them. It's got to be near Poland. You can't be comparing those population sizes. Moldova's killing the game. But Georgia, Giga Chikadze. I don't want to include Ilia Topuria. He left the country when he was very young to live in Spain. He's now representing Spain, who arguably could have been another addition to D tier now that Ilia has made his way into the top 5. But I'm going to have to put Georgia at C tier. They have great fighters. They do. Merab Dvalishvili's #1 in the bantamweight division. Arguably the best bantamweight on planet Earth right now after seeing what he did to Yan. After Aljo struggled and fluked the first fight with Yan and then barely got a split decision in the second fight. To watch what Merab has been doing to these top bantamweights is crazy to see. So you've got to put Georgia on the map. They've got to be at C tier. For such a small country, they're making an impact on the scene. They've got Giga Chikadze in the featherweight division. He's top 10. Don't ask me why her name's on the top of my head, but Liana Jujua, she's fucking hot. So I don't know if she's good at fighting. I'm pretty sure she's cut from the UFC, but she's pretty hot. Weird nose. Looks like Cyndaquil, but pretty hot. So big ups to Georgia, I guess. Roman Dolidze in the middleweight division. He's Georgian. Top 10. Just lost to Vittori. Oh, well, he's top 10. Small country. Killing it across multiple weight divisions. Bunch of ranked fighters in Chikadze, Merab, and Roman Dolidze. Georgia's got to be on the map. We move on. Soy boys. Canada. GSP kicked in the door to kickstart Canadian MMA, did he? Where the prospects at? Because other than Canadian Michael Chandler, Mike Malott, yous ain't got nothing but Charles Jourdain and Tanner Bosa. And they're not looking too hot right now, Canada. Sorry, I love picking on Canada because never as a country made sense to not be good at fighting. No offense. Listen, everywhere in the West is soy, but Canada just takes the biscuit, in all honesty. I'm worried I'll get my bank account frozen for speaking out against them. Yeah, I'm saying they're extra soy. So I'm going to put Canada at D tier, but they do need to be mentioned. They had GSP, but I'm not looking back that far in time. So I'm going to sort of like, you know, use the fact that GSP was a champ, but I'm not going to put it all on that. Otherwise, they would be higher up on this tier list. So they do have some contenders unranked that are surging now and again. I don't know, dude. 5 years ago, their best prospects was KB Buller, so that tells you all you need to know about Canadian MMA. So, yeah, I'm going to put them at D tier right now. And that's where they belong. They're the lowest that made the list in this video. Ha ha. Your Prime Minister is Castro's son. We move on to another country. I don't know why Canada held all the smoke there, but I've got, you know what I mean? Got a bone to pick with them. Either way, fuck Rigo. We go to New Zealand. Gotta be B tier for New Zealand. I'm putting them below the UK. I'm going to put them below the UK. Small population size. Not as small as Moldova. They still got a bit of population. I mean, they're first world for now. Like most first world countries at the moment. Either way, you've got to put them at B tier. Adesanya's the champ. But outside of him, they've got Ulberg. They've got Dan Hooker. And then it's kind of Mike Mathetha. And then it falls off. You know what I mean? Whereas in the UK, and for UK fighters, which is why I've put them higher than New Zealand, you've got the champ in Edwards compared to the champ in Adesanya. Adesanya, a more impressive champ, but you've also got Aspinall, like you would have, but then, you know, you're comparing Aspinall to Allberg, and you're comparing, what else are you comparing? You're comparing Arnold Allen, I guess, to Dan Hooker, and we saw what happened in that fight. Like, it drops off a bit outside of their top dog in Israel Adesanya, who arguably should be representing, you know, either way. We're going to move on. But yeah, I think New Zealand got to be in the mix. In the B tier section. Could be mix and match with the UK based on population size, though. I'm going to be real with you. Could be mix and match based on population size. Very small country. And a lot of the Australians go there to train, but we're not going to use that as a factor. Otherwise, US would be in 3 positions above S tier. And I've just spoiled it. The US is in S tier, dude. They've been killing the game for a long time. They invented the game. US are really good at inventing games, so they can be good at them. You know what I mean? Football everywhere else in the world. You pick it up with your hands and you still call it football. Pretty weird. But at least they're not like Canada, who can't win any game at all on Earth. So they make up hockey so they can win it. Either way, sorry, Canada. Really taking shots today, Canada. Either way, USA. Gotta be on the top. They're the top dog. Look at the champions right now in the UFC. There's a different trend other than the fact that they're from the US, but we might do another tier list based on that. Who knows? But that one's a bit too risky for YouTube. Either way, you got to put the US at the top. They got Jamal Hill, Aljo, Jones. I didn't even have to keep going after that. You know what I mean? And a lot of the other champs like Moreno is training in America right now. But again, not going to include that part of it. But still, they have people in every division. If they're not the champion of a division, lightweight, for example, they don't have the champ of that division, but they have Poirier, Gaethje, Chandler. Boom, boom, boom. Top 5. You know what I mean? They've always got, if not the champ of the division, a swarm of monsters in the top 5 area of that division instead. Usman at welterweight, of course, was doing his thing. And you just look at every division, you'll see a US fighter in the top 5, at least, of every single division in the UFC. They're always represented somehow. So, even though Jamal Hill's not really the champ yet, even though he is, because he did beat Glover better than Yuri did, I think once Jamal Hill solidifies that, there's no arguing that US is the top dog in the sport. They've been doing it for the longest. They've got the facilities for it as well. They've got the PI. Everyone's going there to train, so they're just getting better based on like foreign talent coming over, like people going over to ATT like Gamrot and other fighters like that are just making ATT better, and then the Americans that naturally go to ATT are going to get better from that. So I think this is the best way to do the tier list. US at number 1, Russia at number 2, Brazil at 3, Australia 4, Mexico 5, UK 6, but maybe tied 6 with New Zealand, depending on population size. Poland 7th, Moldova 8th, but honestly, Moldova could be S tier based on the stats. China 9th, Georgia 10th, and then who cares about the rest? They have one good fighter. Like and subscribe. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.